Sometimes I just get too loud for too many microphones. Our gospel, reading has some very familiar text in it, right? We've all heard, or maybe we've all heard, turn the other cheek. Even if we don't know the story, we've heard it, right? We've all heard, judge, don't judge lest you be judged. If you grew up hearing an old school Bible translation, judge not lest you be judged, or do not judge and you won't be judged. There's a million different versions, but some very famous passages and teaching of Jesus in this. I want to focus on why Jesus is preaching this way, encouraging people to be kind of extravagant in mercy and compassion in the midst of their life. Because what the original listeners were hearing doesn't sound any better than what we're hearing, right? Like, we all know if you get hit, turn the other cheek is near impossible for most of us to even kind of comprehend that type of attitude. So it wasn't like they were in this position where they heard this and said, oh my gosh, so easy for me to do, and it's hard for us, right? This is really challenging stuff that Jesus is teaching. And so I want to start just with a note for us to remember. Jesus likes to teach using exaggeration. So there's a lot of times Jesus will teach something and he kind of exaggerates his point to help us understand what he's trying to say. And probably the most famous example of this is when Jesus says, if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, right? That's Jesus teaching through exaggeration. We know that a lot of his followers were not like Captain Hook, right? We know that. They didn't cut their hands off and have like a pirate hand. They knew what he was saying. And so there's a little bit of that in this. When Jesus is talking about to the extreme that we show mercy in the face of aggression. But the point he's trying to make is there. And I think we'll get it. So three reasons why Jesus encourages us to be extravagant in mercy and compassion, as opposed to meeting aggression with aggression, or meeting rage with rage, or meeting injustice with injustice. And the first reason we need to understand about Jesus is that he believes so firmly that judgment and justice are in his Father's hand, he doesn't worry about it at all. It's not his to do. I don't know if you've ever had a job or ever been in kind of a workplace where there's someone there who you can trust so surely to do their job that you don't even have to think about it. You just know it's going to get done. You don't even have to think about it. You can go on your day doing other things that you need to do because you know this thing is going to get handled by this person, and you completely put your trust in them. Jesus looks to his Father for judgment and justice in that way. So Jesus never says, be kind because God doesn't like any judgment. But Jesus so surely trusts his Father for all matters of judgment and to handle all justice that he doesn't feel he has to. So for Jesus, mercy is kind of an act of faith. Right? When Jesus is on the cross and he's practicing mercy, it's really his extreme act of faith, because he puts his trust in his Father, even in the most painful and humiliating situations, so firmly that he's still acting in mercy because he knows his Father has justice in his hand. So Jesus, one, is encouraging his hearers, them, and us, of course, today, that justice and judgment and righting the wrongs of the world is firmly in the hands of the Father. It doesn't mean we don't work for good. It doesn't mean we don't try to do what we can, but it means the weight of fixing everything that's wrong is not on us. It's firmly in the Father's hand. So because Jesus believes that so securely, he practices this extravagant mercy. So that's one reason that Jesus encourages his Father. Encourages his followers to trust his Father with judgment and practice mercy. Now, the second is maybe a little more frightening. It's that he's telling us the standard by which we'll be measured isn't the one he created for us. It's the one we create for us. He says, do not judge, you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. Right? The standard which you'll be measured to is your own. So if you are to be extravagant, if you are to be generous and giving of mercy and compassion, that's the standard you've created. But if you're going to be stingy with it, that is also the standard you've created. Now, you may be smarter than me. Probably most of you are. And you may understand, have compassion and insight into other people's lives more than me. But there have been times in my life when I really wasn't compassionate with someone, and then later on realized how wrong I was. I'm going to give you two quick examples. One, when I was younger and growing up and going to church. I guess I should say this before. My family is full of stubborn Italian men. You may not know any stubborn men, but I know enough to keep, of course, for all of you to have enough. I am the exception to that. You can ask my wife. But other people in my family are very stubborn Italian men. And so they know how to, think about stubborn Italian men is they know how to do everyone's job better than the people who do their job. Doesn't matter what it is. If they have no experience in it, it doesn't matter. They know how to do everyone's job better than the people who do those jobs. And that includes clergy. So growing up, we had a priest that would like to take a summer vacation. It was the vacation he was allowed. And he liked to take it with his wife every summer. And I remember some people in my family like, why does he have to take so many weeks off in the summer? Jesus doesn't take any vacation in the summer. Why does the priest got to take vacation? I remember thinking, yeah, probably, right? Jesus doesn't take time off, right? Clergy shouldn't take that much time off. And then, we're talking like 3 weeks here. We're not talking like months. And then when I became a priest, I was like, holy cow, I need a vacation. Like I understand, right? Like I shouldn't have been, these people don't know what they're talking about. This job can be hard sometimes, and it's good to just unplug and be with your family. And I understood why he did that. We should have been commending him for taking care of himself. And instead, people were being super critical, of course, because they knew how to do the job better than he did, right? That's how many times in life have we found ourselves being too harsh only to bring it back later when we realized we didn't know the whole story or we didn't realize how hard it was. Another example that maybe some of us are guilty of, when you're young and before you have children, you think, when I have kids, my kids are never going to do this, this, and this like so-and-so's kids do. Right? And then you have 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 15-year-olds, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be. Now I get why so-and-so's kids did that. They were lucky that's all they did, right? We do those things, right? Because it's easy for us to be harsh with other people till we walk in their shoes, right? Jesus is encouraging us not to be. Have compassion because you don't know. You don't know. And that's true of everyone. You just don't know. You don't know what they've had, what they've dealt with, the life they've had, situations they've encountered. We don't know. So it's easier to be compassionate than it is to be harsh and have to walk it back. And then you don't want that standard to be applied to you because we all, might find ourselves a little judgmental with others, but when it comes to us, we find a lot of reasons to give grace, when we do something that someone else doesn't like. So Jesus is encouraging us as his followers, understand you're going to set the standard for yourself. So if your standard is compassion and mercy and generosity, that's the standard that's going to be applied to you. And if your compassion is being harsh and strict and judgmental, can you live up to that standard? I don't know. If you're a gambler, I wouldn't bet the money on that. I would say what Jesus is doing is the wise move, to err on the side of compassion. So the first reason is because he trusts so fully and completely that judgment and justice is in his Father's hands. The second reason is because our standard of judgment is what is applied to us. Now the third reason might be the one that's most relevant to our lives today. might be the one that connects with us the most. The people listening to Jesus, they were the ones who didn't have a lot of say in how their life went. They were living under Roman occupation. They didn't pay, they didn't control the taxes they paid. They didn't really have people that represented them in their government. They didn't have people that ruled over them like Pontius Pilate, in the time of Jesus, that respected their way of life or their religion or the things they did. Nobody really looked out for them. And it was very easy for them to want people and leaders who embodied their anger at that and their frustration. It was very easy for them to want people to lead who could give voice to their anger and their frustration. But Jesus is encouraging them to do something different. Right? It's very practical in a sense. In the midst of things you can't control, in the midst of your life and its reality, not in the ideal, well, if this person just did this, and if my work just did this, and if these people just did this, all things would be right. In the present reality, imperfect and broken and a mess that we live in, to be an imitator of our Father in heaven and be merciful rather than a reactor to the world around us. Right? He gives us that encouragement. He says, be merciful just as your Father is merciful, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Now, Jesus lived his life to show us how to do this, how to be an imitator and not a reactor. If we live our life reacting to the frustrations of everyone around us, we will be constantly annoyed, constantly frustrated, constantly angry, constantly on the cusp of an explosion. Right? You know that. Because we've all lived that way sometimes. We've all reacted to other people who constantly irritate us, agitate us, and we're constantly on the cusp of just popping off. Right? And Jesus is telling us, I get it. People are frustrating. Life is frustrating. There's a lot that's wrong. But that's not the way you live. You don't live in reaction to everything that's wrong around you. You imitate your Father in heaven. That's your model. And so we can live in imitation of our Father in heaven and try, right, imperfectly as we can to do that. Or we can live in reaction to everyone around us who frustrates us and annoys us and irritates us. One way is going to be a merciful, peaceful way to live, and the other way is going to be constant high blood pressure. But Jesus is encouraging his people, live as an imitator of your Father in heaven. In this imperfect world where people can be frustrating, annoying, agitate you, do things to anger you, choose mercy and compassion. Live in imitation to your Father in heaven. Don't live as a reactor to everyone around you. Don't let them control the condition of your heart and the quality of your life. Follow the example of your Father in heaven. So I will leave you with that same encouragement today. Trust in the Father. He has judgment and justice firmly in his hand. Do the good that we can, but also understand he will make all things right in his time. Understand the standard we set is the one we receive. So err on the side of compassion and be an imitator. Live as an imitator of our Father in heaven, not as a reactor to the frustrations around us. Imitate our Father's merciful heart. Don't react to the frustrations around us. Be an imitator and not a reactor. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.